In the night I find my voice, shout I make my choice.
Under the blinding stage lights, the atmosphere fell into an almost sacred silence as a young Filipino teen slowly walked onto the vast America's Got Talent stage. The brightness was overwhelming, spilling down like a wall of fire, making it hard to see the faces beyond the first few rows. The audience, thousands strong, faded into a soft blur, but the weight of their presence pressed heavily against his chest. Each step echoed louder than it should have, the sound of his shoes tapping against the polished floor ringing in his ears like a countdown. His shirt was simple, slightly faded from years of careful washing, the kind of shirt chosen because it was still good even after countless wears. His shoes bore small cracks along the sides, their soles worn thin by long walks on uneven streets. Yet none of that mattered. What drew the attention of the room were his eyes, wide and uncertain, darting briefly toward the judge's table before returning to the floor. They carried fear, yes, but also something rarer, a quiet courage forged through years of watching his parents give everything they had, and then some, so he could dream. From the judge's panel, curiosity flickered. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table, his expression sharp but attentive. He had seen this walk many times before, the hopeful stride of someone standing on the edge of a life-changing moment. Still, something about the boy's posture, the way he held himself as though he were bracing against a storm, made Simon pause. "What's your name?" Simon asked, his voice cutting cleanly through the hush. The boy swallowed. His fingers tightened around the microphone as though it were the only solid thing in the world. "My name is Miguel," he said, his accent soft but clear. "And tell us a little about yourself," Simon continued. Miguel hesitated, then lifted his gaze. His voice trembled, but he did not stop. "My father is a carpenter," he said. "My mother washes clothes." He took a breath, his chest rising sharply. "They gave up everything so that I could stand here today." The words landed with a quiet force. A ripple moved through the audience, gasps, whispers, the subtle sound of hearts opening. Somewhere in the crowd, someone sniffed back tears. Miguel felt it, the shift in the air, and clutched the microphone tighter until his knuckles turned pale. "This song," he whispered, barely above the silence, "is for them." The first notes of the piano drifted out, gentle and unassuming, like the beginning of a prayer. Miguel closed his eyes for half a second, grounding himself, remembering the nights when music was the only escape from hunger or exhaustion. Then he sang. At first his voice was fragile, trembling like glass under pressure, but as the melody carried him forward, something unlocked. His voice grew, not louder, but fuller, richer, infused with emotion that no technique could teach. It was not the polished sound of a conservatory-trained singer. It was something raw, something honest. Each lyric told a story, of evenings lit by a single bulb, of a mother's hands raw from scrubbing clothes in cold water, of a father returning home late with sawdust clinging to his skin. Miguel sang of empty plates shared with laughter so hunger would not win, of dreams whispered quietly so they would not feel impossible. His voice cracked once, then steadied, strengthened by the truth behind every word. By the second verse, the effect was undeniable. People in the audience wiped their eyes openly. A woman in the front row pressed her hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking. The camera swept across the judges. One leaned forward, eyes glossy. Another nodded slowly, as though absorbing something deeply personal. Even Simon Cowell, known for his restraint, felt his chest tighten. He pressed a hand against it, as if to steady his own heartbeat, his expression softening in a way few had ever seen. This was not just a performance, it was a confession, a love letter, a testament to sacrifice. Miguel reached the final line, his voice lifting gently, then releasing the last note into the air. It trembled, lingered, and dissolved into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no applause, no cheers, just the echo of Miguel's voice hanging in the vast auditorium like a sacred pause. Miguel stood frozen. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his hands shaking as the adrenaline drained away. He lowered his gaze, shame creeping in, that familiar fear whispering that it hadn't been enough, that he hadn't done enough to honor them. Then the moment shattered. The audience erupted. Applause crashed like thunder, cheers rising in waves, people leaping to their feet. The sound was overwhelming, a roar of approval and shared emotion. Miguel flinched, startled, then looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. The camera zoomed in on Simon Cowell, who blinked rapidly, shaking his head as if trying to process what he had just witnessed. His eyes glistened openly now. He didn't bother hiding it. One of the judges leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Miguel," she said softly, "that wasn't just a song. That was your life, wasn't it?" Miguel swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered. "Every word. It was my parents' story." His voice cracked completely then. He raised a hand to his face, embarrassed as tears spilled freely down his cheeks. He tried to hide them, but the crowd responded instantly, clapping louder, encouraging him, wrapping him in warmth rather than judgment. Simon leaned toward his microphone. His voice, usually sharp and clipped, was low and gentle. "Miguel," he said, "I've heard thousands of singers, but what you did tonight wasn't about perfect notes, it was about truth." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You reminded us why music exists in the first place." Miguel stared at him, stunned. His chest tightened, his breath catching. For the first time it felt like someone had looked at him and said, "Your dream is valid." The other judges nodded, visibly moved. Then, just as Miguel thought the moment might be over, the judge beside Simon slowly reached forward and pressed the golden buzzer. The sound rang out like destiny. Golden confetti exploded from above, cascading down in a shimmering storm. Gasps turned into screams as Miguel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. His hands covered his face as tears poured freely, no longer restrained. The confetti clung to his hair, his shoulders, his shaking hands, as if the universe itself had chosen him in that moment. The crowd stood as one, chanting his name. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing the instant when a poor boy's dream collided with reality. In the audience, Miguel's mother clutched her chest, sobbing openly. His father stood beside her, frozen, rough hands trembling as he stared at the stage. He had built tables and doors his whole life, things meant to last quietly in the background. He had never imagined watching his son be showered in gold before the world. The host rushed onto the stage, pulling Miguel into a hug as confetti continued to fall. Miguel could barely speak. "Thank you," he cried. "Thank you so much." One of the judges wiped her eyes and whispered, "This is why we do this show." Simon remained seated, watching silently. His expression was tender, almost paternal. When he finally spoke again, his voice was soft. "Miguel, don't ever forget this moment," he said, "not because of the golden buzzer, but because tonight you proved that truth and love are stronger than anything money can buy." Moments later, Miguel's parents were escorted onto the stage. When they embraced, the room seemed to hold its breath. Miguel buried his face into his mother's shoulder, sobbing. "This is for you," he whispered. "I did it for you." "No," his mother replied through tears, cupping his face. "We did it together." Backstage, away from the noise, Miguel sat on a small wooden bench. Confetti still clung to his hair. His heart raced, his throat sore from singing and crying. The excitement faded into a quiet fear. What if this was just luck? What if I'm not enough? He bowed his head, hands trembling. His mother sat beside him, rubbing his back gently. "Miguel, hijo," she whispered, "do you remember singing in the marketplace with no microphone? People stopped to listen, not because you were perfect, but because you were real." His father knelt in front of him, calloused hands resting firmly on his knees. "We didn't send you here to be perfect," he said quietly. "We sent you here to be yourself. That is enough." Miguel nodded, tears returning, but this time they were warm, grounding. "I'll do it for us," he whispered. Weeks passed, and Miguel's story spread. Clips of his audition went viral. Headlines spoke of sacrifice, of family, of truth. When the finals arrived, the stage was brighter than ever. Miguel stepped forward once more. "This is for every parent who sacrificed their dreams so their children could have one," he said. He sang again, stronger now, but still. El Raw. And when the night ended, he did not win first place. Yet something greater happened. A foundation stepped forward, offering support for his education and his family's future. Miguel walked off the stage, not with a trophy, but with something far more enduring, a legacy of hope.